Aintrazi on the left, Jones on the right.
Jonathan Blank, actually the winner of our summer championships at SCGCOD.
Like his deck choice this weekend?
Big fan. Big fan. Hogak, pretty nice deck last I heard.
So Kevin Jones on the play, going to start with Llanowar Elves. Though they're both ramp strategies, it's interesting, right? Kevin actually has to be the aggro deck here because he is the smaller of the two ramp decks.
Right. There's a point where, sure, you might cast a Hydroid Krasis for 8, but Ollie's going to cast one for 14.
Kevin will do his best here. Turn 2, Risen Reef ramps into a Temple Garden.
This is setting up for the turn 3 Nissa. This is strong. This is a really good start for the Bant ramp deck.
Growth Spiral from Ollie. And I absolutely agree. If you can get that turn 3 Nissa, that's going to ramp faster than Ollie can deal with. And, another thing about Ollie decks, they don't play removal. Just at all.
No, his thing's going to be bigger, and that's the plan. The plan's good. Stick to the plan. Hydroid Krasis for 8, meet Hydroid Krasis for 14.
I like some things about this deck list. We have a splash of a one of Massacre Girl. Yeah, just enough black sources to play that.
Well, when you have things like Circuitous Route in your deck, it's not that unlikely that you can just find things to cast these spells. These ramp spells fix your mana in a lot of ways.
One Yarok the Desecrated as well that can double up your Agent of Treacheries and Golos.
Ooh. I believe Yarok doubles Field of the Dead?
It also doubles Field of the Dead.
Nice. Perfect.
And here's the Nissa you mentioned. So, Nissa Who Shakes the World from Kevin.
Likely going to see it untap a non-forest land. Generally, you want to kind of not target the forest themselves, since Nissa can't put more counters on one that's already a creature. So you want to save those activations up for the turns where you actually want to use the double mana effect twice.
And here's where the lack of removal on Ollie's side is going to come back to bite him a bit. Sometimes you'll see how these ramp decks, a card like Mass Manipulation that can save you from this spot, but Ollie doesn't play that.
No, Agent of Treachery is really his only way out of this type of situation. And without him having a ramp spell this turn, we're kind of a ways off.
Yeah, this turn is land 5, so he would need any ramp spell would do if he has the Agent. And it looks like he does have Agent of Treachery in his hand, but I don't know that he has a ramp spell. Instead, no, it says one of Yarok.
On Kevin's side, that is a horrifying card to not immediately have an answer to. So this is almost a check of sorts on Kevin's side. Even if we know that Ollie doesn't have anything to do with it immediately, that's kind of scary.
So what are the cards you'd be really worried about from Kevin? You don't really know the deck list.
Who knows? Anything. Deputy of Detention can be scary. We see blue and white sources on the opponent's side. Getting to take 2 cards with that is a very big deal. Next turn, we're going to be on 6 mana on Ollie's side of the battlefield. There are just so many different things that may seem innocuous when it's only one trigger, but getting it twice is just backbreaking.
Yeah, and that'd be interesting, right? So when you're playing against a brew like Ollie's, you kind of look at a board here, and you think, well, if I was designing the deck, what would I put in the deck?
Exactly.
So I think I like you saying Deputy of Detention. I looked at, I might say Cavalier of Thorns could make sense here.
That'd be a big one. Even honestly, Cavalier of Gales is one where you just get 2 Brainstorms. That's pretty strong.
Yeah, Risen Reef might make sense. Now, it turns out none of those cards are actually in here. It's Elvish Rejuvenator, Agent of Treachery, and Golos.
How busted would a Hostage Taker be?
Ooh. Not bad.
I'm just trying to think of all the red creatures I can that would be reasonable in a mid-range killer.
Second Risen Reef for Kevin. And very quick game over on the Legacy side. Brad Bonin takes game 1 over Hunter Nance. 4-color control, a deck kind of built to prey on Delver's strategies. Not surprising to see that one go in Brad's direction. And Nissa goes to work again, as you mentioned, putting counters on the non-forest lands.
Ooh. Teferi Time Raveler coming down and undoing Ollie's last turn by returning that Yarok to hand. This is going to make it to where Ollie just kind of didn't get a 5th turn.
Yeah, that was his whole play. Yarok requires another card to help it out. And I'm looking at Ollie's list, and I don't see a play on just 6 mana that I'm really excited about here.
Yeah, this is a rough spot. We might be seeing something like a Hydroid Krasis to draw a couple of cards.
Yeah.
But what Ollie really wants is, say, another Black Source and a Massacre Girl to kind of mop this battlefield up.
Yeah, as it is, I think it might just be cast Yarok again, say go.
That's got to feel awful.
Yeah, well, I mean, he does have Agent of Treachery in his hand, right? So if Yarok survives, then he gets 2 Agent of Treacheries.
Okay, get this. All right,
Okay.
all right. So Kevin is going to put Nissa up to ult range next turn.
Oh, goodness.
And then if Ollie gets to steal it from there and ult it, it
Okay.
just kills the Nissa, basically. And Ollie gets to ramp a bunch.
This year, Ollie drew his basic swamp. Yes, there is a basic swamp in this deck, because Golos. Now, if he has Massacre Girl, it's actually a pretty good board for Massacre Girl.
Oh yeah, Massacre Girl is incredible at this point. It kills the Llanowar Elves and the Risen Reefs, and that basically guarantees that everything will die.
Yeah, the lands. Looks like it's just Yarok again. He did, yes, see the swamp there, but did not have the land to follow it up. And Sun Petal Grove. So if he can survive, you see Ollie at 16.
I think he's trying to figure out if he wants to leave a blocker up or pressure a Planeswalker with his Hydroid Krasis.
Well, I like this. He has to do a bit of showmanship because he wants Kevin to plus that Nissa because he wants to steal it next turn.
There's a point where it may have been a little better to just go after the Teferi to completely clean it up. But that's a little tougher to say one way or another.
Yeah, there aren't that many things you're worried about chump blocking, I suppose. Like, he's at 16. He doesn't need the blocker.
Right.
Now, the thing is the kind of play where, like, there's a bit of a rope-a-dope thing going, right? Where you don't attack the Nissa because you want Nissa to plus. Kevin Jones is the kind of player who is going to, I think, in my opinion, is going to be stronger at reading that than most.
Yeah, but even then, unless exactly the card Agent of Treachery is on your radar, you still know you need to close the game soon.
Yeah.
Oof.
Deputy Detention takes care of Yarok. That just might be good enough on its own.
Yeah, Agent of Treachery stealing a Nissa is not going to be nearly good enough if you're facing down lethal.
Ollie's teammate Eli Kassis picks up game 1 to split the game 1s. Nissa is an ultimate range. Counters on Temple Garden.
Four.
All right, so 4 mana. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's 10 he has available.
Oof.
It's going to be Tristani Discordant.
Ooh.
This is one of the big payoffs.
That's a big game.
All creatures, his creatures get +1/+1.
Some very happy Dryad or Soldier tokens.
Yeah, we're going to see a pair of Risen Reefs. That's for 4. Llanowar Elf makes 6. The 2 lands swing that makes 14. It is not lethal.
Possibly going to see a trade with one of the Risen Reefs. At some point, Ollie is to start trying to play damage control.
Yeah, it's so hard, right? Without a card like Planar Cleansing for Ollie to cast here, it just doesn't feel like this matters.
Yeah, you know, he can make land drops and try to go somewhere from there. Nexus of Fate can really make a lot of things feel possible. But he's just going to be spinning his wheels for a little bit.
How tilted would you be on Kevin's side if Ollie just cast Planar Cleansing next turn? It's in the format. It just drops a 3rd white source, goes for it, gets back the Yarok.
Like, yes. The basic Plains, Watery Grave, Simmet Guildgate, Breeding Pool, Planar Cleansing deck. My favorite.
You know, outside the Planar Cleansing, all the cards you mentioned are in his list.
I was reading them off the battlefield, you see.
Ollie does not have that. So game 1 goes to Kevin Jones. I think you mentioned that turn 3 Nissa.
It really just did so much. It gave Kevin so much mana. The deck never runs out of cards because of Hydroid Crisis and Risen Reef. Ollie's not very good at interacting with either of those mana or card advantage engines, and Kevin just getting to kind of have the dream draw of Llanowar Elf into Reef into Nissa just was too strong.
So can we talk about how I like that Ollie's sideboard is more Haymakers? It's second Yarok, Zakama, Liliana Dreadhorde General, second Massacre Girl.
Well, I don't know if Massacre Girl is necessarily a haymaker, but he's customizing his threats a little bit here, and I can respect that. Something like Agent of Treachery isn't going to be very good against some of the more aggressive strategies, so being able to turn that into a Massacre Girl is going to be nice.
And this kind of matchup, do you just want all the haymakers?
So the things that I'm looking to do here, Deputy of Attention is a way to check things like Nissa. You want to make sure you're not just losing to that card. You could look at Time Wipe, since so many of Kevin's cards are just creatures. Getting to blow up Llanowar Elves and Leafkin Druid are just things that are going to feel like strip mines, almost.
So to that, do you want things like Legion's End?
That's probably a little bit too narrow and doesn't have enough upside. If you want to have more answers to Hydroid Crisis, that's a way to do it. But most of the way that you're going to be answering Hydroid Crisis is just by having a bigger Hydroid Crisis or Nexus of Fading a bunch. So I don't think I'm really looking to put Legion's End in the deck when Kevin doesn't have a million things to really target with it.
So coming up this fall, we have SCG Regionals. That's a modern tournament. It's taking place in a couple of months. A couple months away. It's August now, so this is October 19th, Season 2 Regional Championships. Part of the SCG Tour, you can get SCG points. These happen around the country. Now, for signing up, you will get a playmat, for the exclusive playmat for the first 200 players at each location.
Oh, here. I love that artwork.
So that one is for 200, and everyone does. We also get tokens to the players as well. With the same token, we get that, and we get our invitational champion, Colin Roundtree, a servo token, which we see there. We first given out at SCG Regionals.
Honestly, I like that token a lot. I hadn't seen that before right now, and it's just unique. I know it sounds like a silly thing to praise, but like, very frequently some of them will kind of run together in aesthetic. I've not seen a token like this one before, and I really like that.
Well, you have like the Kaladesh body, Kaladesh legs, and then just like boom, Colin Roundtree.
What was that movie from like the 2000s about robots? Oh gosh, it was like I think it was a children's movie.
iRobot.
It was not iRobot. I know iRobot. I know the laws of robotics, Matthias. Do not test me.
I think it was iRobot.
Yeah.
What about WALL-E?
Oh, don't get me. I will cry on this broadcast if you bring up WALL-E. Oh my gosh.
All right, we're going to have to move on then to the locations where you can play SCG Regionals. We have 12 different locations. You can see them on your screen here. Each of these will be holding them around the country. Now, for prizes, we mentioned this is part of the SCG Tour, which means invites to the Invitational to the top 8. On top of that, $12,000 to the winner, paying all the way to the top 32 players, and SCG points to earn buys on the line as well.
Regional championships are just great. So frequently, they almost have the same feel as one of our classic tournaments, but the stakes are higher in that there's cash on the line and more invites go out per event. The events themselves are so much fun to play in.
So we see how Golos Nexus, hoping to see one of the Goloses this game. Ollie, 4 copies of the card.
That is the kind of card that Kevin needs to be able to answer as well. You know, before we talked about that Yarok check that Ollie put Kevin on, he was able to pass it a couple of times through Teferi and Detention Sphere, respectively. But being able to untap with a Golos and use its activated ability is going to be pretty strong. Basically every time.
This is why Ollie has to fill his deck with gigantic cards, so that when he activates Golos, it's just game breaking.
Has to. I think you mean gets to.
Your opponent gets, I want to see a Golos activation, revealing Agent of Treachery, Zakama, and Nexus of Fate. Just boom. Hold on, I have 23 mana worth of cards here. I will cast them.
For the low, low price of 7.
It's a discount of 16 mana.
Triggers a comma. Wait,
oh, wow.
There's more.
Wait, just do it again.
Oh, yeah. With Golos in his deck, Ollie is just the new Billy Mays.
Kevin really going into the tank here on sideboarding for the matchup. Which makes sense. It's not the kind of matchup you prepare for.
Yeah, and there's a point where even if you have a vague idea of what's going on, knowing which pieces of your sideboard you want to bring in is kind of a tough call on its own, because in a lot of ways it feels like you just have to hedge a bunch and go, all right, well, he could be this version of ramp deck, or this version of go over the top, or this version of go over the top. And it's hard to tell if something like, maybe Duress is a bad example, but Negate is going to be something that you want to play when all you saw Ollie play was Growth Spiral and creatures.
Yeah, it does make things like Dovin's Veto questionable here. If I was on Kevin's side, I would not expect Ollie's deck to have 4 Nexus of Fate. That would not be on my radar at this point.
I don't expect Ollie's decks to have anything. They just do.
It's going to have some card. I'll have to read it when he casts it.
Yeah, I'm going to, when I sit down across from Ollie Aintrazi, I expect that I'm going to know the text of about 70% of his cards, and I expect he's going to be better at playing them than me.
So Massacre Girl into Nexus of Fate into Zakama.
It's nice. Just a classic curve.
If you have Yarok in play, then Zakama makes mana. It's
Massacre Girl super kills stuff. There's a pretty strong chance that Yarok isn't going to be in the deck anymore.
Well, that's so sad. What makes you say that?
Well, last game we saw Teferi completely undo one of Ollie's turns when he kind of took the risk and tapped out for this Yarok, and then the next turn, Deputy of Detention undid that turn again. So Ollie, in a lot of ways, just kind of skipped 2 turns.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? So I agree it didn't look good there. But if you're going to put Yarok in your deck, this feels like one of the matchups where you'd want it. Kevin's really light on removal.
Well, it depends how interactive you're expecting your opponent to be. It's going to be great against something like Bant Scape Shift, where they're very light on interaction. Or against something like Vampires, where it very barely dodges a lot of removal. But against something like this Bant deck that's high on Deputy of Detention and Teferi, it's going to be it's going to look worse.
Ollie taking a mulligan. That's going to hurt his deck because his curve, to be honest, starts at 5.
Yeah, and a lot of the times...
It's not an exaggeration. Look, it is.
It has Growth Spiral.
It has Growth Spiral. Yes,
Teferi.
Circuitous Route, Elvish Rejuvenator, and everything else costs 5 or more? We can Krasis on 1. We can Krasis for 2/2 on 4 mana.
So sometimes you go third. It's complicated. But if he gets to start playing his cards, then he's going to be a pretty heavy favorite a lot of the time, unless Kevin has one of those fast starts where he can actually just start applying pressure right out the gate.
Llanowar Elves really felt good on Kevin's side last game.
Yeah, it just completely broke serve.
And on 6, players are good to go.
And that's a pretty big relief for Ollie. We talk about all these big mana spells, which on one hand you kind of think to yourself, all right, that means he doesn't get to start playing till the mid-late turns of the game. But what it also means is he's just a high-resource deck and needs a high quantity of cards to get to do anything.
Yeah, I'd love to see cards like Circuitous Route or Golos that can 2 for 1 as he ramps up here. On Kevin's side, again, we see Llanowar Elves on turn 1, and that's some danger for Ollie.
I'm going to stop you right there. I've heard this one before.
Scry to the top for Aintrazi.
That's got to feel good. That means it's probably some sort of ramp spell that he gets to play next turn, and we see a Golos hiding out in his hand.
And again, for Kevin, turn 2 Risen Reef. Things going according to plan.
Put in a Temple Garden? Nope.
No, this time it only draws a card. Only 1 ramp spell for Kevin. And we see, is it a ramp spell? Elvish Rejuvenator, and that is going to be the card. Top 5 shows 5 different lands to pick from. Field of the Dead, Basic Mountain. I like that we have colorless lands in this deck.
Well, to be fair, Field of the Dead is pretty close to taking up a spell slot.
Yeah. And that's the one he'll put into play. Right now it is double green, triple blue, single black, no red, no white.
What a
That'll be
world.
fine. That'll be fine for now.
All right, Basic Plains off the top right now.
Another Rejuvenator is the draw.
Close.
Choices. Looks like circuitous route. He picked up another Rejuvenator.
And this is tough since Kevin just passed with no spell. You have to assume someone of Kevin's caliber isn't going to just have nothing.
Looks like a tap land and the route might be the play here.
Trying to
for
figure
Ollie.
out if he wants to just jam the circuitous route into a Dovin's Veto or a Negate.
Or if he wants to be safe and make Rejuvenator.
Right.
And I like it. He decides he's going to go big.
All right, show him. You got it?
I don't think Kevin's registered the card. Has he? Oh, he does. He has 2 negate. I was looking for Dovin's Veto. He didn't have that. And the negate is in Kevin's hand, so Ollie goes for the big play and is punished.
Yep, and you got to play Negate in this over Veto because you have so many basic forests
Sure.
to support Llanowar Elves.
And Nissa on the way back from Kevin, so this a pretty big turn
Well-
of events for him.
Ooh, untapping this breeding pool's big. That means he probably has
Can
another
have
negate.
Right, because he
Yeah.
can tap it for blue, it would still make a green, and he can negate again.
Right. You know what negate doesn't counter?
Well, most of Ollie's deck.
Golos.
Still is one in Ollie's hand.
And if Ollie has the ability to, there is some incentive to try and wait on this Golos because you would like to get a Field of the Dead and get 2 triggers out of it if you can, since it can grab
Yeah.
any land.
Well, also he needs white and red for
Right.
his 5 colors. So what he'd like to do, this is kind of what you see in Tron players, where he'd like to see which one he draws naturally and then Golos for the other one.
Exactly.
It's like the idea you don't want to. You have a wild card. You want to wait as long as you can before you choose what it is.
See if Temple of Triumph in his deck. Maybe that's a reasonable search here.
Hold on. We have to put
I
on
think
the
it's
list.
just Epiphany, Mystery, and Silence at a glance.
Do you think Mystery Sounds? Malady. Temple Garden. That one doesn't count.
Looks like no red-white land.
No red, white land. Okay. So he has Elvish Rejuvenator here, and then he's going to pass it because he picked up Growth Spiral for the turn.
Okay, that's fine. That's reasonable. That gives him an instant speed way to make a token and hopefully get something going.
Yeah, interestingly, I don't believe he has the land yet. So the Growth Spiral, for it to ramp, he's going to have to draw the land off the Growth Spiral.
Can't win a tournament without getting a little lucky.
On Kevin's side, we see Leafkin Druid. It triggers Risen Reef. Top card goes into his hand. Not too bad. On Kevin's side, he's basically just on the table, ramped both times, and Ollie's deck has not presented too much for him to deal with.
No, it feels like he's trying to take a more reactive posture without Ollie putting up anything of substance for him to really react to yet.
Yeah. Another Leafkin Druid means another draw off Risen Reef. Another card in hand. That one was Negate that he picked up.
Ooh, that's a big pickup here.
So last turn, the Negate on the breeding pool, that was a bluff on Kevin's side. Not a bluff anymore.
Does it ever feel bad to bluff something and then have
And then
it
you-
come true and now you
Oh,
go,
I hate
oh,
it.
I telegraphed the top of my library.
And then your opponent afterwards like, I knew you had that. Like,
Yeah, I guess.
yeah, you did, but no, I was being tricky, really. I didn't.
Listen, opponent, I let you think that.
Says go.
No firing off a growth
No
spiral.
Growth Spiral. I guess Ollie really wanted to make sure he had the land before doing it. Back to Ollie we go. 4 mana. Looks like 5 mana. Looks like we do have a Golos.
Ooh.
And no, actually, it's Massacre Girl. And this one, as it normally does, is going to sweep the board.
Yes.
So,
wow.
-1 to each creature, and then every time Massacre Girl kills a creature, it happens again. So everything ends up getting -7, -7.
Oh my gosh. And this also eliminates all of Kevin's actual his lands with land types. So
all
any Sun Petal Groves, Hinterland Harbors, they're going to enter the battlefield tapped.
Yeah, and no mana doubling off Nissa. This was a huge play.
Yeah, this is a big swing in Ollie's favor.
Just had to have Massacre Girl on your radar out of this deck.
Look, Massacre Girl is nice.
I mean, you have to feel it from Kevin's side, right? You look at this board and you have to think, man, should have played around the Massacre Girl. And it's like, there's no way.
You?
Deputy Detention will remove the 4/4.
That puts Kevin in a spot where he may just be able to ultimate this Nissa next turn and have more mana than Ollie.
Yeah, attacks for 3, Ollie down to 7. Might not matter, you can just keep the damage coming. Back to Aintrazi. Yeah, with Nissa at ultimate range, there's not a clear way.
Agent of Treachery is a way for Ollie to maybe take this back here.
If he doesn't have it, he can't remove this Nissa.
He's a Deputy of Detention in his hand.
Okay, so he can. Yeah, he has the Agent as well. It looks like he missed the land drop. He has a land, but I don't know if it enters the battlefield untapped.
He doesn't have a white mana, does he? Or all his lands soul tie?
Oh no, he doesn't. Yeah, he was missing red and white.
Oh my gosh.
So we can't do either of the plays. Now, does this come into enter the battlefield untapped? If it does, he can steal the Nissa. Some update, Brad Bonin, the winner, 2-0 in the Legacy match. And no, he's putting it into play tapped. It's the Temple of Silence. There is a Golos here. That'll confine the mountain. That'll set him up for next turn, but that's a turn too late. This is going to be interesting, right? Ollie will then just have to power through an ultimated Nissa, which I guess Golos could do it.
Yeah.
Right? Golos can keep hitting Nexus of Fates, and then nothing else matters.
It gives you an avenue.
There is Golos, Tireless Pilgrim.
Hard to tell if Ollie from here is going to get another Field of the Dead to just try to go in on these zombies to power through a Nissa Ultimate, or if he's going to get the red source to try and Golos.
Right. There's 2 ways to power through the Nissa Ultimate. It's either with zombies or with that activated ability, and Ollie's got to make a choice here.
Right, and, it's going to kind of come down to if he thinks that he's going to be able to play through things like Negate. Kevin has demonstrated that he has them, and he kind of worked pretty hard to telegraph it earlier.
Yeah, you may play them without paying their mana cost. Means they can still be countered, however.
That's true, exactly.
So Nexus of Fate could still be negated.
All right, let's see.
Yeah.
So Kevin has not seen Agent of Treachery yet, so there's a chance he rolls up Nissa again.
If he does that, then that'd be a huge swing. Ollie would steal the Planeswalker and ultimate it himself.
And get tokens for all the lands that came into play because of Field of the Dead.
We see Time Wipe. That'll clear off the board.
Cute. It returns the Deputy of Detention to hand before the ability resolves, so that would mean the Massacre Girl gets cleared by Time Wipe.
He gets the Deputy back.
Right.
That's really strong. And he's going to go back to attacking. Oh no, he pluses the Nissa though.
Oh my goodness.
So Ollie's going to go down to 4.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Here's Llanowar Elves.
Okay, so, there's a...
Deputy still wins, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that
Oh no,
Llanowar Elves,
but he gets tokens from Field of the Dead if
no.
Nissa gets forests. So between Agent of Treachery and the tokens, Ollie actually still has lines here.
I'm going to look at how many forests. So Ollie has a breeding pool, a temple garden, a forest, and an overgrown tomb. He has 4 forests in his deck, and I don't believe any of them are on the battlefield.
Okay, that's 4 tokens.
Agent of Treachery, the play.
The other option is just rolling up Nissa to make a blocker.
No, not even, just not close.
No.
That's not how he played.
Look.
Look.
The thing is Deputy of Detention can't get the land out of the way, where it can get the tokens out of the way.
Right, and he knows there's a deputy in Kevin's
Exactly.
hand.
So that would have been the merit to that line. I do like this one more. I would guess I was just pointing out the other thought here, is if you're trying to just really respect this Deputy of Detention, that is a way to make it happen.
Love it here on Ollie's side. So can get, he's checking for us. Yeah, we counted 4, 3 duels and a basic. And there they are. Each one will make a zombie.
They come into play tapped. You may still pay 2 life for Shocklands if you want. They will still enter the battlefield tapped, but it is legal to pay life for them.
Four blockers. Back to Kevin we go. He's got an answer to the zombies, which both players know about.
And this is actually still really close. So Kevin has the option to Deputy of Detention these zombies down, and then can just attack Nissa. And that kind of forces a chump block.
Do you attack Nissa or do you attack Ollie?
You probably have to attack Nissa, because if Ollie gets to untap with it, each time that Ollie untaps with this Nissa, it makes an indestructible 3/3.
Sure. Jonathan Blank, Ely Kassis, they have moved on to game 3 on the modern table. Kevin casts the deputy. That'll clear away the zombies. Now the attack. The one looks like they both go at Nissa. So Lanwarel's down, Nissa off the battlefield as well. And the question, does Ollie have follow-up? Oh, probably. He's still got a lot of cards.
Who's to say?
Deputy of Detention in his hand. Yeah, let's count some lands here. I believe it's 12. Oh, is this Hydroid Krasis?
Oh my gosh.
I think so. That looks like a Krasis for 10.
Ollie strikes me as the man in the market for 5 life and 5 cards.
Yeah, seems okay. We'll go up to 9. This is the part of the game that Kevin needed to avoid.
Right, this is the spot where things really start to slip away. It seemed like Kevin had kind of locked things up, but then this is it. It's just right out at the edge of his fingertips.
Another Field of the Dead means 2 more zombies. Passes the turn.
Ollie just telling Kevin to impress him.
If you're on Kevin's side, you almost want to stick around and see what happens. Look, Jonathan Blank, he's just chuckling over there.
Oh.
Yeah. And they're going to head to a 3rd game.
Wow. And backs against the wall. So right now, neither Ely nor Ollie can give up another game, or it's going to just be done.
All right, so they're assigned word for game 3. Meanwhile, we're going to jump over to the modern table. Ely Kassis and Jonathan Blank here for game number 3.
Feels nice to look over at Ollie's side of the battlefield and see a Nissa emblem when he doesn't play Nissa.
All right, we had Leyline of the Void in play for Jonathan for the Hogak deck.
This is to turn off the Thopter Sword combo out of the Urza deck.
Right back, Ely, turn 1 Mox Opal, Thoughtseize, takes Stitcher's Supplier.
Hogak is powerful. It's not beat infinite life powerful.
Stitcher Supplier for Jonathan. Bins Bloodghast, Leyline of the Void, and Carrion Feeder.
So this feels a little bit like a victory. You hit a Graveyard Matters card, you hit a card you don't want to draw, and you hit another card. 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
And the Supplier was a draw off the top as well.
It's a nice one. That is just one of the strongest cards in the deck.
I like it when I get Thought Seized and then I draw the card they Thought Seized.
We call that the Moto bug.
I used to say the Vendilion Click. Just didn't have, it was just a 3-1 flash.
Card's a classic. Don't you just love a good old Nimble Obstructionist?
Yeah. Pirate Spellbomb from Ely. And a land. 2 cards left. One of them is Thopter Foundry, but there is Leyline of the Void in play. Nonetheless, Ely's going to make the Thopter Foundry. He's down to 16.
And at this point, he just wants to get artifacts on the battlefield to make sure that Mox Opal stays turned on through something like Force of Vicar. There's a strong chance he also just wants to sacrifice this Mishra's Bauble. So that's a spot where you can't really afford to sacrifice Pyrite Spellbomb anymore and keep Opal turned on, so you might as well just get the card out of your hand.
And a fetch for Dryad Arbor. That's there to convoke out Hogak.
Always been a Dryad Arbor fan.
So nice 12 power on the board for Jonathan.
No big deal. That's basically the Hogak MO.
Like
Turn 2,
like
12 power.
It's an 8/8 for 2.
Testing for the
0.
recent Mythic Championship in Barcelona. That was the house thing. We would just shout at each other. Turn 2, 12.
It's not even hard. Just
No, there are no Vengevines involved in this draw, and you have 12 power.
neat. Well, Ely's going to have to find an Ensnaring Bridge and find it quickly. Does he even have them? He does, right?
Let's double check. It's hard to imagine that he were to have 0, but it's hard to say he has a bunch. He has 2 and 2 Whir of Invention, so that's kind of like having 4.
Has the mana for Whir, so when if he draws one, he can go and get the bridge. And Jonathan's going to try to give him as few turns as possible for that.
Yeah, this battlefield has slipped away to the point where it is unlikely that you're really trying to use Pirate Spellbomb to shoot things. You're probably just going to be drawing cards instead.
T-Bone player Zan Syed to the stage, please. Zan Syed to the stage, please.
Okay, this plays.
All right, Thopter trades. Looks like 11 was the hit. Yeah, Ely down to 6. And if Blank gets one more hit
in. Is that a
in,
shock and a pass? That's got to feel awful.
so you're looking at Assassin's Trophy.
It's likely an Assassin's Trophy at this point.
And Ely's hand 2 lands. And one more draw to go. He needs a Whir or a bridge. I think he found another land.
Well, theoretically, you could still crack the Spellbomb, play a land, and draw into the Whir.
Actually, Teferi Time Raveler. Okay.
All right. That buys time.
Can bounce the Hogak. It might buy time.
That's true. So it can return the Hogak to hand, and if Blank finds something, say more Bloodghasts, then that could just slam the door shut right here.
Jonathan's showing a bit of his hand. Ely casts the Teferi. Jonathan, I think, thought it was plussing, so he was... Well, actually, before it's on the table, he's debating whether he wanted to do Assassin's Trophy, but he got to resolve.
Yeah, you need to... Well, it looks like they're thinking about it.
Not sure what you would trophy here. Yeah, Hogak back to Jonathan's hand.
Open competitors, that is time in the round. Once again, that is time in the round for the open.
Ely, 2 cards left.
It's a Goblin Engineer and a land from the looks of things. Goblin
Like it
Engineer
as
is
well.
good to find something out of your deck that you never want to draw ever. Go ahead, put
Yeah,
it in
puts
exile. But most importantly, it's a blocker at this point.
So that's strategy engineer. You look for the worst artifact in your deck and you just exile it.
Yeah, I'm probably at the point where I'm just off some of these cards.
I don't want to draw Sword of the Meek anymore.
You know,
Doesn't do anything.
there's a not zero chance that something like Grafdigger's Cage isn't going to do anything. Extra
I like
Mox
that.
Opals.
Second Mox, yeah, extra Mox Opal.
Yeah,
Bad
let's
draw.
dump
Let's get
it.
it out of there.
Love it.
And a pass. Back to Jonathan. No mana up for the Spell Bomb right now, so it's free to attack. Another Bloodghast. That would put Healy down to 1 if he takes all the damage. So Stitcher's Supplier goes at Teferi, and it looks like the Bloodghasts go upstairs. Now, Engineer's a 1-2, so Healy can defend for the Teferi pretty easily here.
Yeah, I think the attack maybe should have been a Bloodghast at the face and 2 Supplier, or the Supplier being one of the things going into Fairy, but if you just wanted it to go to the graveyard, this makes sense.
Go back to Ely. He can actually survive one more turn with the Spell Bomb and the Engineer working together.
Yep.
The Supplier milled over 2 lands and a Faithless Looting.
And the nice thing about the Stitcher Supplier dying is now Blank's graveyard is stocked again. For
Just with cards.
Right, before there was a spot where that Hogak couldn't actually be recast anymore.
Do you think that Jonathan will take a turn off attacking?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
I suppose you can attack and then post-combat make it happen?
Right, if you hit a land here, you have to attack in order to force Kassis to do anything to stay alive, which will presumably kill the Bloodghast, so then when you play a land, they return to the battlefield untapped.
Faithless Looting for Jonathan.
It's also a point where actually lethaling here is kind of difficult because that Thopter Foundry is hiding out up top.
All right. Well, this one's free. He gets to put Hogak into the graveyard. And I think because of the Thopters and the Engineer, he's going to bring back Bloodghast. He might just convoke a Hogak. You still think it's an attack?
Yeah, at this point I think you probably are going to go for it. It depends on what else he has in his hand.
Satyr Wayfinder from Blank. Maybe it doesn't matter.
Okay, so this makes it to where the Wayfinder is able to convoke out the Hogak.
Finds land, mills over 2 Force of Vigors, but also adds a Gravecrawler.
I was really hoping to hit a Vengevine there.
Yeah, if he hit Vengevines, then Hogak would bring them back.
Right.
Totally reasonable. There's the 8/8. Bloodghast can feel free to swing. He's got another land ready in his hand.
Wouldn't you know it, the Bloodghast went to combat anyway. All normal stuff to happen in a modern deck. You saw it, I saw it. He played, 1 spell or something, 2 spells, and ended up with an 8/8, a 2/1, and a 1/1. And the same number of cards in his hand.
Healy gonna start eating the artifacts, throwing them into the Thopter Foundry. Goes up to 3, sacrifices the Astrolabe. That and the Goblin Engineer will both block Bloodghasts. Ely will stick around at 3 life. Crack a fetch, go back down to 2. Ensnaring Bridge and Whir of Invention, those are the ones he's looking for.
Not really picky which one comes up, just that one of them does.
Because Hogak has Trample, this feels like his last turn to find one of them.
And Whir is actually one of the ways at this point that he could possibly get an extra turn, even though Jonathan presumably has a copy of Assassin's Trophy. If he could cast it mid-combat with a Teferi in play, then Jonathan would not be able to cast it mid-combat.
Card was Spire of Industry. Now remember,
Oof.
Chromatic Star, because of Leyline of the Void, is not a redraw here.
Correct.
So only the Spell Bomb is. He's going to go for it. Does he find anything?
What was it?
He does not. Thoughtseize Inspire. So Ely extends the hand. Jonathan Blank gets the win, and with it, their team is victorious. Brad Bonin, Jonathan Blank, and Kevin Jones improve to 6-0.
Next rounds are being posted at